Welcome, YouTube. This is Detroit's Darkest Times. First thing I want you to do is subscribe, hit the like, and the notification bell. If you want to support the channel, the cash out is $FC313. The PayPal DDT313. If you'd like to support the channel, go ahead and do so. Today we're going to talk about my encounter, and people new to this channel is telling my Detroit story. And my name is Slick from Detroit City. And today we're going to talk about my encounter with a dude named Richard on Trumbull Avenue in Detroit City. When I first met this dude, he was always coming by the front of my house, and he always had a dog with him, a black Doberman, and had some brown, Doberman's black-brown, But anyways, he would walk his dog all the time, and he lived on the corner. He lived on the corner of Selden and Trumbull, right across from George's Beer and Wine Store. Anyways, this dude used to come by the house a lot, and we'd be on the front porch and all that. And we didn't know him. We just got to know him over time, because every time he'd come by the house, he would be headed to Scripps Park, that's where he'd walk his dog at. And he was a friendly dude, and he would always stop and talk to us, stuff like that. And if you've been watching my videos and audios, I mentioned this guy in one, and he's a dude that showed me the first $1,000 bill that I ever seen. But anyways, he was all right dude, but he was just like one of them dudes. I'm sure you've encountered him. He's like one of them dudes that just always bragging about something. You know what I mean? And no matter what it was, he just wants you to know about it, And at this time, when he showed the $1,000 bill in his wallet, me and my friends thought it was fake, but he was like, "No, it's real," And because we had never seen no $1,000 bill before. But anyways, when he opened his wallet, he had a badge in his wallet too, and he said he was a Detroit police officer. Now maybe he used to be a police officer, or maybe he was one of them guys that just act like he was a police officer. You know what I mean? You got them kind of people too. But anyways, he did have a badge. We never seen him in a control car, for one. And at this particular time when we first met him, he didn't even have a car. So I don't know if dude used to be a police officer. And, a lot of times, if you could be a police officer and just get, you have to leave for different reasons depending on, you know, what happened, why you was a police officer. So, this could have happened. I'm not for sure because, like I said, I don't know if he was really a police officer or he's just saying it. But he would always, want to brag about things like that. And like I said, he was an all right guy. He was just, to me, he was just uh, a dude that liked to brag a lot. But anyways, he used to walk his dog up to Scripps Park, and we got to know him over time because he'd come by all the time. And at night, he would carry a big black flashlight, like the policemen have, and then he would like go to the park, walk his dog or something. Sometimes they had incidents in the park with the police there, and when they would be there, if he got wind of it or whatever, I think he had, I'm not for sure, but I think he had a CB or something like that. Because because they had multiple incidents in that Scripps Park back in the day. And he would always, be headed up that way on foot. And he also used to wear this hat that was kind of like it was a hat that was a two-way hat, if you know what I'm talking about. It had a bib on both sides. And sometimes he'd wear that hat. And as we got to know him and stuff like that, and then we met his wife, and she worked at Kmart in Lincoln Park, and she used to catch a bus all the way to Kmart from, Trumbull and Selden. But as time went, he ended up buying a car, and it was nothing like a police car. It was light blue. And I forget what it was. It might have been a Nova, a hatchback Nova or something back in the day, but it was similar to that body style. It might have been a Nova, but it could have been something similar. I'm not for sure. But anyways, he ended up buying that car. Then they had transportation. Because like I said, when he showed us that money in his wallet, he had a big stack of money, but he just was showing us the $1,000 bill that he had. And saying he was a police officer and all that, And he possibly could have been in the past or something. Who knows? But one thing I did notice that he didn't work, and he wasn't an old dude. At that time he might have been maybe 40 something like that. I'm just guessing his age. I'm not really for sure. But anyways, as time went on and we, got to know him over, a long period of time, and we met his wife, and she was real nice and stuff. Then they started inviting us up to their apartment, to eat dinner with them and stuff like that. Once in a while, And once in a while, we'd go up there and stuff. And then when we went up there, he had a lot of steel guitars. He had in his dining room, he had like a ledge in his dining room. And I believe he had it all through the house, really, but he had trains. So he was, he was a big fan of model trains. But he said these trains were real expensive, that they wasn't, real cheap trains or anything like that. And he had like a track going around the ledge, and then he had the trains all, set up there and stuff. Looked pretty good. But like I said, the dude was okay, but he was just a little bit, like to brag a lot to me, to somebody else maybe not. But anyways, and we went up there just a few times, not many. I think 2 or 3 times, at different, occasions and stuff like that, and ate with his wife and him and stuff like that. And then, he'd show you the steel guitar. He really knew how to play the steel guitar, make train noises on the steel guitar and all that. And, just showing stuff that he had. Oh, and weapons also. He had, and I don't know if these were real or not because he said don't touch them, but he had drawers in the dining room, and he would pull the drawers out. He would tell you, you want to see some guns, and he would pull the drawer out, and then had like a towel in there, and then he had different kind of hand weapons, And one was like a 357 Magnum, then it was a 44, and then like a 38, stuff like that, And maybe a 32 too. He had quite a few of them, different ones, but he'd tell you don't touch them. So at that point, I was just wondering, we were young at this time, so I didn't know if they were plastic, and he was just acting like they was real. But now that I'm older, I can understand him saying don't touch them if they were real, because then you got fingerprints on his weapon, So that could have been the reason he said that. But when he said that later on, I told my friends and stuff, I said, I don't think them guns are real. They're probably plastic. And they was like, why you say that? And I was like, well, because he didn't want you to touch them, so it just made me think they were plastic. But they could have been real. He just didn't want, now that I'm older, he just didn't want fingerprints on real weapons. That could have been the case. But anyways, he used to tell us stories in the neighborhood and stuff like that. And I'm going to share one story with y'all that he told me that he was walking his dog one time in Scripps Park at night, because he'd go up there different times and sometimes late at night, in the middle of the night. But he said he always had a weapon on him, stuff like that at night. And then he had his dog too. But anyways, he said he was at Scripps Park one night, and a dude came up to him, was going to try to rob him. And the dude didn't have a weapon, but I think he said the dude had a knife, and so he said he pulled out his 44 Magnum, and now I don't know if this is true. This is a story he was telling us. He said he pulled his 44 Magnum on the guy, and he said the guy just passed out. You know what I mean? Because he put it right to his head. But I don't know if that was just a story he made up. Because like I said, this dude had a lot of stories. And to me, he was just the type of dude that liked to brag a lot. But that was one of the stories that he had said. And, and a lot of people would believe that. But for me, I was just, the whole time I knew dude, when he was just doing certain things, I just felt like he was just a big bragger, and he wasn't very truthful. That was what I got from dude. Anyways, he had came by there one time, and he had a gold 10 speed, but it was really nice, And he said it cost $2,000 at the time. And it was one of them bikes where it didn't have bolts on the wheels that hold the tires on the bike. It had just like handles where you could twist them to relieve the pressure, and then you could just pull the tire off, something like that. And I forget what kind it was. It might have been a Swin, but I'm not for sure. But it was a real nice bike. It was gold, and he said he gave $2,000 for it. And that was another thing. He just he rode it over there to show us. We had bikes too, but we just had BMX and stuff like that. And then he's showing that off and stuff, basically just bragging about it. Because for him to tell us it cost $2,000, to me, I thought that was bragging about it, where he didn't really have to mention how much he paid for it, if he really gave that much for it. I mean, it was a real sharp bike, but I don't know if he was being truthful about that neither. But as time went on, there was this tall girl in the neighborhood, and he started being friendly with her. And she was like, I believe she was in junior high school, but she was a real tall girl. Like she could be playing basketball or something like that, a tall girl. And and then he took a liking to her, as far as being real friendly with her and stuff like that. But now she's in junior high school. And I really don't know where this girl lived, because she didn't live on our block or nothing, but she had to live in the neighborhood somewhere. But anyways, he had taken a liking to her, and then next thing you know, I guess around when nobody was around, he started inviting her to his apartment, and then she met his wife and all that, and she was going over there eating dinner with him, stuff like that. And then the story that I heard on down the road was that he had got a divorce from his wife, and that he had hooked up with that girl, and so, but I know this girl was in junior high school, so she wasn't even she wasn't a grown person, but for some reason, he took a liking to her, and then they ain't no telling what he was doing. He could have been giving her money or whatever, but we noticed she started going to his place a lot, and then. But later, the story that I heard, that he ended up getting a divorce and ended up hooking up with her. So I don't know if he waited till she was 18 or had did it before she was 18. I'm not certain on that, but that was just a story I got. And that just goes to show you that, for me, my judgment of that guy, I was right about a lot of things about him, because for him to do that, he was just not a good dude in the long run. You know what I mean? Because for one, if he didn't wait till the girl was 18, he was actually, doing wrong right there. But just to be, involved with that young lady and stuff like that, and you know, he probably was just, finessing her and stuff like that, and giving her money, and I even think he gave her, because he had two 10 speeds, but I believe one belonged to his wife, and I really think that she had rode. I believe she rode to our house one day on that other bike, and she said that he gave it to her. So really, that was a crazy incident that happened, and but you just never know. There is a lot of older guys that will take up, with a younger lady, but most guys will be, up in their 50s or 60s or something like that and just take up with somebody that's like in their 20s. So for his sake, I hope he waited till the girl was 18. I really don't know. I just heard the story later on down the road that he had hooked up with that girl. So, but you see, today you see it all the time on, a lot of rich dudes and stuff like that. They're like way up in the age, 60 and stuff like that. Anywhere from 50 on up, 60, 70 and stuff. And then they got this fine mama with them, and they're either dating them or get married to them and stuff like that. But all that's, all that's got a lot to do with how much money you got, basically, because if you got a lot of money, you're going to have a lot of women chasing you, That's a known fact. But, yeah, but anyways, that dude was just a character. And, the whole time when I first, encountered with him, and then we got to know him over time. This is a long length of time, you know what I mean? And, but we got to know him and stuff like that. And I just, I always used to tell my friends, this dude just brags too much. And, I just told my friends, I really think he's not telling the truth, you know what I mean, about all the stuff he used to say. And, because like I said, at this time we knew him, his wife worked, but he didn't, you know. But he could have been a police officer and got hurt on a job or whatever and was just drawing checks and stuff like that. That could have been his situation. But just the thing that when he was saying it, he didn't even own a vehicle at the time. He eventually bought one, but I just thought all that was odd. And then he ended up hooking up with her. And then as time passed, we moved down to Elm Street, and that guy kind of drifted away because he was kind of like hollering at us all the time, but only because he had to walk past our house. But once we moved to Elm Street, we didn't see him no more. But then while I was over that way is when I heard that he had hooked up with that girl. And I thought that was crazy, because his wife was a nice lady, And, but I don't know, what the scoop was. But hopefully for his sake, he waited till she was 18. But who knows, you know what I mean? That's just a situation that happened with him. And speaking of tall people, once we moved to Elm Street, there was this dude that worked at Butternut store on Trumbull and Butternut. And he was a tall dude. And, he looked like he could play some basketball too because he was one of them tall cats. But he worked there at the store, doing the stock and all that. And, but we all called him Treetop because he was a tall dude. And a lot of people get called that. It's real tall. It's just a nickname for a tall person, from us. But I don't know from other people, but it's just a common, to call a tall person tree or something like that, But anyways, on Elm Street, one time, some people had came into our house, and it was over a bicycle is what the deal was. And what had happened is there was a kid that rode a bike to Butternut store and went in the store. Well, while he was in the store, somebody stole his bike. So he seen a dude that we knew. I'm thinking, I'm trying to figure out how I ended up at our house, really, because I don't even think I was there, but I had heard about it. You know what I mean? But so it was over a bike. Somebody had stole a bike. They thought it was, I think, my brother's friend that stole it or whatever. They thought it was, but it come to be not true. But anyways, so the kid had went and got some of his family or friends or whatever, some bigger dudes, and they had came in, and then some people. No, they was trying to come in the house because they was saying something about, well, y'all took the bike, so we're gonna take your TV or some shit like that, you know. But really, the bike wasn't there. It was the kid just gave them some wrong information, is what the deal was. But anyway, some people ran around the corner and got a tree from the store, and he came around there, and he was bigger than all them. And they were saying, they was gonna take the TV and stuff like that, and he's like, "No, y'all ain't taking nothing. Y'all need to go on." Because I think they lived across Grand River or something like that. And he said, y'all need to get on back across Grand River where y'all came from. And but the bike wasn't there, so I think the boy thought the bike was there, and went and told some other guys, and then it ended up being like a crowd of people and stuff like that. But at this point, I wasn't there. This is just a story I heard, so it's a little fuzzy, but it was over a bicycle that wasn't even there. But the boy had told some other people that, the bike was there. So, and before they left, Tree had to talk to him, and he said because we knew him, and he said, I'll go look in the house, look in the garage, there's a little metal shed in the backyard. He said, I'll look everywhere for y'all, but if it ain't here, y'all got to go. So he looked everywhere, and it wasn't there. So he told them, and then they went on. But then they were jumping on that boy that was his bike, because he gave them the wrong information, and they actually came near and showed out for no reason, but they thought they was going to get a TV, and that wasn't going to happen, but that's, I wasn't there, so that's just a story that I heard. And I thought that was crazy because, I don't know if they got a hold of that boy when they got him home or not, because he was a young boy, But he actually just gave them wrong information and stirred up a whole bunch of trouble. And, nothing ever was said after that day and stuff like that. So, but people's bikes got stolen all the time back in them days. If you left your bike unattended, somebody was going to get on it and take it. That's just the way it was. But, I don't know why the boy said it was, or he might have said he thought it was at our house or whatever. Who knows? But I just thought that was crazy. That was, it's part of my story, but like I said, I wasn't near of the day of. I think I was gone with my friends and stuff, and then I heard about it later on when I got home. But I thought that was crazy. I was like, damn, you know, because they were saying that they was going to take the TV, and I was like, that was crazy, you know. And then who knows? There might not have been a bike ever stolen. The boy may not even have owned a bike. It could have been a situation because shit like this happened too in Detroit. People would make up some shit and to try to take something from you. You know what I mean? Like the bike story could have been just made up because they needed a TV at their house, you know. Because back in them days, some people had, you know, if your TV went out, it wasn't a whole lot of people had a bunch of money that could go buy another TV, you know what I mean? Because it could have been one of them incidents. Because I just thought it was odd that I heard that commotion and all that, and then once they left, they never came back or it come down the street or anything. You know what I mean? To see if the, you know, because it seemed like if it was me and I thought my bike was there, but dude told me my bike wasn't there, I would still come to the neighborhood to see if I see my bike anywhere. You see what I'm saying? So that could have been just a made up thing. They was probably trying to think they was going to get a TV, you know, or something. And that's what I take from that situation. Because things like that happen many a times. You know, where people would say, you know, they'd make up something just to either get something or just try to justify them taking something. You know what I mean? That's kind of stuff was going on back in the day. But and then also down Elm Street. This happened on Elm Street. Down Elm Street at the corner is a park, and if you go to your left, it's Grand River. And on the other side of Grand River, on this side of Grand River, but if you go, you got to go left and then go cut the corner to go around to be on Grand River. And about half a block up is JoJo's Record Shop. And the back of his place is, you could see it from Elm Park because it had like an empty lot back there, and that's where he'd park at, and his friends would park at. But anyways, what had happened is we used to go into JoJo's and play video games and stuff like that. And we bought some records from them and stuff like that. But one time we're in there, and this dude that we know is in there too, and we knew a lot of people that worked at Shell gas station because they had like a whole group of guys that would work at Shell gas station. Well, this dude's in there, and then as soon as JoJo sees him, he's got that Shell gas station jacket on, and he tells him, "Hey, you need to get out of my store. You was trying to steal my battery last night," or something like that. And he said, I think he said he had his rifle aimed at him with the scope, is what he was yelling, you know, because we was in there, and then dude was like, "Nah, man, I ain't never tried to steal no battery from over here." And but what it was is we knew right off what it was. Is his older brother worked at Shell gas station, and he felt like after, because we all left because dude was mad, and but he just really was telling the dude with the Shell gas station jacket to go. And so we all left with him because we knew him, you know. We all left, and he was mad. And he was telling JoJo, he was like, "Man, you got the wrong dude." He said, "I don't steal batteries," and he didn't steal. You know what I mean? And but as we left and we was walking down Green River, he said that he thinks it was his older brother because his older brother did do stuff like that. You know what I mean? I mean, he did get in trouble and stuff like that. And his older brother did work at Shell gas station too. So really, it could have been him. It could have been another dude too that just had a Shell gas station jacket on. Who knows? But once he got accused of it, he was telling us right off top that he thinks it was his older brother because his older brother always getting into trouble, you know. But he was pissed because, you know, he didn't do that kind of stuff, but he was real mad. And but anyway, from that day forward, he never went back to JoJo's record shop again. We went there plenty of times, but he just never went back because they had that encounter. But truthfully, you know, it wasn't him, you know. And I don't know for sure if it was his older brother or not. That's just what he was saying, you know. Because there was a whole bunch of dudes worked at Shell gas station. We had a Shell gas station on Grand River. We had a Shell gas station on Warren and Trumbull, you know, and they had a lot of guys working at the gas station. They all had the Shell gas station jackets, you know. So it could have been any one of them, really, to be honest with you. And but when JoJo was yelling at him, he was telling him that he had a rifle aimed at him with the scope, you know. And then he was like, "You didn't have no rifle aimed at me because it wasn't me," you know. So, but it was just a big incident.